Alrighty. Welcome, everybody, to Mind War Episode 4. Very excited for tonight's episode. As you can see, we have the very peaceful, this is, in my opinion, an ideal sort of setting for conversations like we'll be having tonight. So, everyone just find a seat on the couch, enjoy the fire, enjoy the storm, bring your food, bring your drinks. Got a bunch to cover tonight, but it's probably going to be a bit of a shorter episode compared to my previous episodes, which were ranging from 2.5 to 3.5 hours. Some topics tonight include family, relationships, democracy, and of course, something I cover every episode, which is my main area of expertise, which is psychological warfare. Basically covering how the ruling class has been socially engineering the public for a very, very long time. With regards to that, prior to the internet age, they had pretty much control of 100% of the channels of information. They controlled what everyone in the Western world saw on their TV every single day. They were easily able to shape the beliefs and opinions of the public, with experts on social engineering controlling these channels. They, of course, also controlled entertainment. They would use emotional propaganda, inverted good versus evil storylines to program us with a false understanding of our history, of who we are, what our identity is, and so forth. Wanted to get started a little bit tonight, just musing a little bit about family, relationships, and so forth. We're living in pretty tough times these days. Everyone's feeling it. We're all stressed out. We are lacking in community, lacking in meaning, lacking in positive relationships with each other. Many families are broken down, and all of this is the result of the covert warfare that has been ongoing against us since at least the 70s. With family things, if you have children in the modern world, you can no longer afford to be ignorant about the dangers in your environment. I think this is one of the most important issues facing our world today. We want to make sure future generations of our children are healthy. And in order to have healthy future generations, the family unit needs to be healthy. That is the key pillar that holds up Western civilization. One of the biggest areas that modern parents are ignorant in is when it comes to screens. You heard the term iPad babies. The thing with screens is they are so good at holding a child's attention and keeping them occupied that they essentially function as a sort of free babysitter. So it becomes very tempting for parents in the modern world to just sit their kids in front of screens and let the screen take care of the kid and raise the kid. So they have to do significantly less work. And they're sending them to these public schools. Public schools are good for socializing, not so good for much else. But the screens are really corrupting the minds of our youth. Kids are getting addicted to screens at age 2, 3, 4, 5. By the time they're 8, 9, 10, starting to see pornography on the internet. So it's very important that parents do not allow their children to have just unsupervised, endless screen use, and that parents are actually taking responsibility for the massive responsibility that is raising children these days, and not just allowing the screens to do that for them. If anyone's in the chat, feel free to say hi. If you have any questions, concerns, feel free to let me know. Beautiful fire we have going on here. Hope everyone's settled in for Mind War episode 4 here. Purpose of this channel is just my sort of beginning phases of practicing speaking, practicing what I want to do over the next 10, 20 years, which is educating the public about important topics. So I'm just going to use this stream as sort of a practice ground and speak about whatever topics I find are most important in the modern era. And certainly parenting is a big thing. So it's very important that parents are taking responsibility for what their kids are doing on screens. Kids should not be getting a smartphone, in my opinion, until they're about 15, 16, maybe 14 at the youngest. And it should be monitored, heavily monitored by the parents until they're 18. And kids should be educated about all the dangers online that are lurking. Especially young girls these days, once they reach around age of 9 to 12. There's a lot of sick men on the internet nowadays, and that's growing in number every single day, who are finding and targeting these young girls online. Parents often completely ignorant to the problem. Every young girl now, almost all of them, they get smartphones at a very young age. This effectively gives predators 24/7 access to your children if you don't know what you're doing. They have audio and video recording on them 24/7, every single night, alone in their room. Predators are accessing these children and brainwashing them and love bombing them and getting them emotionally dependent on these predators. They're often blackmailing them once they send them pictures and videos and such, saying, you have to do as I say or I'm going to leak these images and videos that you sent me. There are even criminal gangs online who do this, quote unquote, sort of professionally, where they seek out and target these girls at scale and share information with each other and get a bunch of these girls under their control. So if you do give your children or young teenagers a smartphone, especially for the girls, you do not want to be giving them unrestricted phone access overnight, each night. They can use it during the day, but in my opinion, giving them that unrestricted access every night is just opening the door for these predators to get to your children. The world has changed significantly over the last 10, 15 years. I mean, we can all feel it. We're all stressed. In my opinion, everyone is on the spectrum of mental illness, from minorly mentally ill to severely mentally ill. It's almost impossible not to be affected at all by the toxic environment we're living in these days. And if you're someone who is pretty functional and doing pretty well, I think you should pat yourself on the back, because we have been under systematic attack here since at least the 70s, so that's 55 plus years. Pretty crazy. And where the public is only starting to realize that we've been under attack for so long, since we've started to get our own information channels to where we can start educating the public, and the ruling elite do not control all of the information channels anymore. I think anyone who understands these topics should be trying to raise awareness about them online. But at the same time, you don't want to be force educating people around you in real life. Like your friends and family in real life, you don't want to be force feeding them this information. A lot of the times they do not want to hear about it, and it will cause interpersonal damage within your relationships, especially if you try to frame them as stupid or whatnot for not understanding these things. Also, the general public has typically been conditioned to socially attack anyone speaking about the ideas I frequently speak about. So, also bringing those risks in. Could get fired from your job if you speak about this stuff at your job. But raising awareness online is something I think everyone can do and should be doing. So, with regards to family, should we be having children these days? Should everyone be having children these days? Maybe some thoughts on antinatalism. I know when people hear antinatalism, they immediately have a sort of negative reaction to this term. How could anyone support such a biological strategy that essentially ensures your death as a species over time? And I sympathize with that. I would never fully endorse antinatalism, but I do think that these people should be heard out and that they do make some valid points sometimes. I also think that not everyone should be having children, necessarily. In my opinion, the most important qualities that you should have if you want to have children is to be in an emotionally and mentally healthy state where you are likely to be capable of not only maintaining a long-term relationship with your significant other, but also capable of giving healthy love to your children over time and taking it on as a lifelong responsibility. Many parents in recent decades, the boomer era and such, a lot of them, in my opinion, had children they were just doing what everyone else was doing. They didn't see it as this major responsibility. And in the Western world, it sort of became the norm to having kids to them was, okay, you keep them under your roof, you feed them, you clothe them, you give them the basics, and then once they turn 18, that's it. Your responsibility is effectively over. You kick them out of the house to fend for themselves, and now they're an adult, and that's that. Your responsibility is mostly over. After that, maybe you see them once a year at Christmas, and even that is like just because you feel guilty if you don't, really, you know? So there's a lot of neglect going on with people who have had children over recent decades. A lot of people come from broken homes these days, which is not surprising given all the warfare against us. If you're someone who has parents who are still together, who want to spend time with you, who love you and care about you, you should consider yourself lucky. Many people do not have that these days. So yeah, if you are someone who is in a mentally healthy place, you feel you are capable of maintaining a marriage, capable of giving your children healthy love, an honest self-assessment where you're clearly able to take care of yourself, able to maintain relationships, etc., then yeah, I do think you should have kids. I don't think money should be ever really an issue that causes you to not have kids if you have the right qualities. If you really want to, you can always figure it out, and having children will give you that motivation to figure it out no matter what. I mean, we see people from the third world having, 5+ kids with no money. They're doing fine. Then you see white couples who make a combined $60,000, $70,000 a year saying they can't afford children. So I think that is often used as an excuse to delay having children. I respect people who have children. Many people in some of the communities I'm in online, off-topic crew, shout out to you guys. A few of you guys have children. Big respect to you guys. I think you guys are doing a great job likely. You seem very competent. But I also respect people who conclude at the end of their honest self-assessment that they are struggling too much to be able to morally take on that responsibility for another human life when they are dealing with significant mental health troubles and are barely able to take care of themselves. But I would never go full antinatalism, certainly. But I just think that some of their points are worth considering. The issue is these days, if you have ignorant parents, if you have mentally ill parents, and you are born into this modern environment, you are likely to simply just get addicted to screens from age 2 or 3, addicted to porn by age 10. By the time you're a teenager, the world's crumbling down around you. Things are getting less safe. The suffering to pleasure ratio just is going to be, the suffering is going to way outmatch any good aspects of a lot of children being born today's lives. Just due to the average mental health of parents these days, people are not able to maintain long-term relationships anymore on average. There are too many temptations out there with social media, dating apps. A lot of people are addicted to porn, etc., etc. We've lost a lot of wisdom from our past that has given us the ability to maintain marriages long-term. And I just feel really bad for a lot of the kids being born today and over the last 5-10 years who are going to be facing a lot of suffering from this mentally ill environment they are in and all the dangers in their environment that their guardians are unaware of. Kids also went through the COVID era. Of course, this had a severe negative impact on them, significantly harmed their development. Key critical social years were removed from their lives. Kids are not learning to be as social anymore these days. A lot of people are they're spending so much time on screens nowadays that they're starting to value their online communities, online friends, more than their in real life communities, friends, and family. Especially if they have abusive family, which is quite common these days. And that's a scary world that's developing here. In real life communities are breaking away, dying, being replaced with online community. And this is exactly how the elite want us. They want us mentally ill, isolated, barely able to survive on our own at most jobs. Most lower tier or even mid-tier jobs these days. Most of that monthly income is going towards rent, bills, and food. Young generations are not able to effectively save for a home at some point. Effectively, young generations have been sold that they are going to have the lifestyle that their parents and grandparents had and had that stolen from them. And they are understandably quite upset about that. Very tragic situation unfolding. For instance, if you asked me, do I want to be born, if I was to die today, would I want to be born again tomorrow to a random Western family? Chosen at complete random. Odds are going to get a set of parents that will not be able to maintain their marriage long term. Completely ignorant to the dangers in their environment. I am just going to be shoved into this system and become mentally ill and very depressed by the time I'm a teenager, unable to form healthy relationships with those around me. But again, if you're someone who's healthy, capable of maintaining relationships and giving healthy love, I think having a family is great, and we need as many of those people as possible having children who understand the dangers and are capable, regardless of if they're making a lot of money or not. I would much rather have poor parents who are capable of giving me healthy love and staying together than rich parents who are not, and just sort of hand off the responsibility to their parenting to the state, babysitting, daycare, etc., etc. A lot of those kids not turning out too well. I also wanted to talk a little bit today about, in terms of mentally ill family dynamics, talk about the narcissistic family dynamic, how this affects children, how it operates. In a narcissistic family unit, it essentially operates as a cult of one, perhaps if both parents are narcissistic, a cult of two. Often it's just one parent is narcissistic and the other parent is an abuse victim and sort of codependent. What happens in these family systems often is kids learn that authenticity, being who they really are, is a bad thing. Being authentic is simply not allowed. They learn to shut down the true parts of themselves and only be what will get a positive reaction from the parents. Of course, this has terrible effects on children, especially later on in life, when they feel they are unable to be their authentic selves around other people in the formation of other relationships later on in life. They feel that their true self is bad and should be repressed. They often become people pleasers. There's the people pleaser archetype. This is typically formed from narcissistic parents in childhood, where they always have to be on high alert to moderate the emotions of others around them. That is how they grew up learning. They feel like everyone else's emotions are their responsibility, so they're constantly apologizing and trying to make sure that everyone around them is okay, while neglecting their own needs and desires and wants, and neglecting their own true self. What happens in these narcissistic systems often is, if there is a child that is willing eventually, at some point in the development, maybe by age 8 or 9 or 10 or 11, they start to fight back. They start to say, no, this is not fair how I'm being treated. I'm not going to stuff down my authentic self. I'm actually going to be confident enough in who I am and my understanding of reality to actually disagree with the narcissistic parent and their narratives, and to call them out when they are being abusive, and to try and start to fight these narratives that the family tries to maintain of being this loving, perfect family on the outside. What happens to these children, unfortunately, is they become scapegoated. The narcissistic parent will turn everyone in the family, in the community, against the child that is willing to speak the truth. And it's very sad to see in these situations how the child who is actually doing the right thing, the only healthy person in that family system, doing the right thing, and they will be framed as the only bad one in that family system. And the attempt will be to socially ostracize them and to preemptively demonize them to everyone else in the family and the community. and to anyone who will listen. Sadly, this is often successful because narcissists are very good at putting on a good show of being a good person. They're very good at managing their public images around people that are not closest to them. So people will often side with the narcissistic parent when they tell them that that kid is mentally ill, that kid is a lost cause, that kid is misbehaving all the time. And when the kid tries to speak his truth or her truth, they will not be believed because all they see from the narcissistic parent is them being, just so lovely and socially competent and nice and all this stuff from the outside. So it's just awful what happens in these situations. Some people will say that you should never, family is everything and you should never put off family members. In my opinion, if you come from a narcissistic family system or an abusive family system, for your own sanity, you need to, if you're not going to totally cut off contact, you need to, what many refer to as gray rocking. Basically, shutting down your authenticity around them. In this case, it's actually a good thing. With abusive people, you do not owe them truth. You do not owe them authenticity. You do not owe them your real emotions, your real feelings, what you're really struggling with. Because if you are vulnerable with them and you're authentic with them, they are simply going to weaponize this information against you. So the optimal strategy typically in these situations is to go gray rock, and that basically means keep it only surface level. Do not share any of your major struggles. Do not share your deepest vulnerabilities with abusive people. Do not feel like you owe them anything, like you owe them truth. You should be comfortable lying to them. You do not owe abusive people anything. Sadly, what also happens to kids from narcissistic family dynamics is they unconsciously seek out archetypes of people who are similar to what their parents are. Even if they have a basic understanding of this stuff on a conscious, rational level, subconsciously, people who mimic the abusive patterns of their parents will be drawn to. So frequently what happens to children of abusive families is they will get into relationship after relationship that repeat that cycle of trauma. And it's just really awful to see. What narcissists do often is they will find a vulnerable target who did not get the love that they needed in childhood and love bomb them, make them feel like they are the best thing in the world, give them all that love that they did not get in childhood, get them addicted to this love bombing. Then once the victim becomes codependent, emotionally dependent on that love, on that validation, that is when the love bombing will stop and the abuse will begin. Then the victim feels like they can't leave, they miss the love bombing phase. They finally got that love that they never got in childhood, and suddenly that person feels like they're gone now, but they're still staying to hope that fake person that was love bombing them comes back. And the narcissistic person will, now that they are codependent, start abusing them, putting in less effort, and basically doing whatever they want with them. Eventually discarding them once they are not getting enough of a high of the benefits from that relationship. And so the victims of these parents will become victims repeatedly throughout life often. Very sad to see. Often victims of abusive parents, when they do find a healthy relationship, they will feel like something's missing. some form of excitement is missing. There's something not titillating enough. And sometimes they will self-sabotage the healthy relationships and become addicted to the unhealthy relationships, and it's just an awful pattern. If only we could find a way to not allow abusive people to have children. I don't know if there's any real practical way of doing this, however, but that would be great. It's just sad to see how common that is. How many kids are getting abused these days, coming from broken homes. I want to talk a little bit about relationships as well. People often have this sort of romantic idea of intimate relationships where, I mean, you're soulmates, it's this unconditional love. You've found your one person that completes you, that just so happened of all the people living in the world to be going to the same school as you, born in the same place as you, you know. And it just feels so good to have this overarching narrative of soulmates and true love and completing each other. Unfortunately, this is often a framing that is used by abusive people to get people to tolerate abuse and get people into a mindset where they feel like they cannot leave because of this overarching narrative of being soulmates. So I really think that this sort of understanding of relationships should be avoided. In an ideal world, both parties will understand that both of you could be happy with other people. Both of you could be getting your needs met by other people. There are many people in the world for everyone that everyone could be happy with. Some people will think that this hurts the romantic narrative and makes the love feel less serious, I guess. But in my opinion, it definitely doesn't have to. The love you feel for each other can be very real still in these instances, and they can still be just as special to you. The only difference is that if that relationship, if the person you're dating was to start disrespecting you, start putting in minimal effort, then you will be capable of leaving that relationship, and you will not be emotionally and psychologically dependent on that relationship continuing for fulfillment. You will know that you can go find a healthy relationship again, and that is that it's not necessary for psychological survival to stay in that relationship. If you really love somebody, in my opinion, the ideal form of love is you want what's best for them, even if that means that you're not in the picture anymore. So if what is best for them is that you guys are no longer a couple, even if that would hurt you a great deal, if this is a healthy form of love, that is what you would want. If your love for them is dependent on them also giving something to you, that is sort of a selfish basis of love. Another thing I wanted to say about relationships is that all relationships, including friendships, are fundamentally transactional. Again, a lot of people will think that this is like a robotic, sort of too rational, too hyper-rational, too logical. This way of looking at things is going to ruin the dynamic that you have with people if it's you're thinking too much about the exact value exchange that's going on. This is not something we should be consciously thinking about all the time, but rather it's just a realistic, it's just the reality of how relationships function. When you get into a relationship with someone, be it an intimate relationship or a friendship, it's because you like certain qualities about them. You like their personality. You like having sex with them. You like maybe perhaps their leadership or the fact that they educate you about certain things. You like their emotional intelligence. You like the quality time you spend together. You like the love that you get from them. And that's not a bad thing. And they also, in turn, like a bunch of qualities about you. This is just a reality of how relationships function, and I don't think understanding this has to bring any negatives. A closer understanding to truth, in my opinion, is always a good thing. And also, this understanding helps to, it makes the relationship be conditional. And that's a good thing. Relationships should not be unconditional. You can love someone unconditionally, but you should not stay with someone unconditionally. Relationships should be conditional on continued respect and effort. That is a key basis to having good relationships long term. If you are willing to tolerate disrespect and lack of effort, that is just going to continue to make that disrespect and lack of effort even worse and worse until that relationship breaks down anyways. So if you nip it in the butt early on, when your partner, your friend, whatever it is, starts treating you with no respect or less respect, starts giving you less effort, etc., you can tell them, this is a boundary break for me. I feel like I rightfully deserve better treatment, the same treatment I'm giving you, and you can exit that relationship. Or maybe they will realize, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize I was doing that, and they can start to respect you again and give you more effort. Then this is also true of friendships. So yeah, all relationships should be conditional. You should never feel... One key I see repeatedly in modern relationships is a lot of people, as we were talking about earlier, are completely isolated these days. They don't have very many good relationships in their life, especially the men these days. A lot of men are very isolated, lacking in good relationships, unable to feel content and fulfilled on their own. So when they do finally get into a relationship, they become emotionally dependent on that relationship, and that is when they begin to tolerate disrespect, to tolerate lack of effort, just so that they're not alone. So in my opinion, key underlying factors for healthy relationships: you need to be capable of ending that relationship if respect and effort stops. And also I want to talk a little bit about authenticity and the importance of authenticity for healthy relationships. I feel authenticity is a topic that doesn't really get talked about enough these days. In my opinion, it's one of the most important topics. I talked a little bit about it earlier, how narcissistic family dynamics make you sort of bury your authentic self. But in order to have healthy, real relationships, you need to be, first of all, you need to understand your authentic self. Many people have stuffed it down for so long that they really don't even know who they really are. They're so used to just wearing these fake masks to people please. They're so scared of the consequences of being their true self. What if they don't get that validation anymore? What if people leave them, right? But do you really want to be in a relationship where you have to hide who you really are in order to get validation from that person? I would argue that is not really a real relationship. And I just personally, I know a lot of people who this is just the norm. Like, they are just inauthentic with each other, especially in like family dynamics where you only see each other maybe a few times a year. It's just completely fake. Everyone's being fake with each other. And it's just basically putting in the bare minimum effort to keep those connections alive, even though they're entirely fake. Learning to become our authentic self, I think, is a goal everyone should have. And learning to commit to being that authentic self, I think everyone should be committed to. This will just get you a lot more satisfaction out of life, and the relationships that you build from being authentic will be much higher quality. Sure, you will push away certain people, but you need to just get comfortable with not being liked by certain people. And eventually you will find your tribe of people that are authentic and that understand who you really are and like you for it. Also, if you're able to be authentic, people talk about charisma, right? Some people think charisma is just this act that people are putting on, is it saying the right lines and such. Really what charisma is just your ability to be yourself fully without fear of judgment. It is the ability for you to remain congruent with your inner world and what you are communicating. People will feel this if you are congruent or if you're putting on an act. So it's not really about what you say or what the perfect line is to communicate. It's just about, are you saying your truth in an unfiltered way? Or are you hiding parts of yourself? So, just wanted to bring that up. Keep that on everyone's mind who may be listening tonight. Hope everyone's enjoying so far. Everyone's nice and comfy on this couch. Got the fire blazing. Nice storm outside. It's a cold November night tonight on Saturday. I'll check the chat here in a little bit, see if anyone said hi or have any questions. Most people who will be watching this, though, will be watching the replay, I'd imagine. But we'll see if there's anyone in the chat so far. So some other topics tonight. I'm going to get into a little bit about democracy. We must protect our democracy, right? This is what the elite tell us is so important. And it's no wonder that they want to protect democracy, because that democratic system that they have set up guarantees their long-term control. Because how they tell you it functions is not really how it functions. They always control both of the primary candidates in any democracy, and whoever wins in that vote, it's simply going to be a different storyline that they sell to the public towards the same long-term agenda against humanity. Everyone we see in the government, this is the conclusion of years of research. I can't prove this, of course, but this is my opinion on the matter. Everyone we see in government systems in the Western world are simply actors who are following orders, and they are selected specifically because they are incompetent and easily controlled through their sinful nature. Many of them are engaging in pedophilia. In order to get certain positions of power, maybe they have to be on video committing these atrocious acts against children. Maybe certain people are groomed for the position from birth, or bribed or threatened. But one way or another, in my opinion, everyone we see in government systems is under control and following orders. How democracy functions is it's a covert tyranny. They tell us that we're in control of these systems and that our vote counts and whatnot and blah, blah, blah. Well, they put on this political theater for us, completely made up political theater in order to socially engineer the public in certain ways. and there is no control on the public level. It is all a show. This is, in my opinion, much more dangerous than some sort of overt tyranny where it's very obvious that the people in power are evil and doing bad things. The problem here is that many normies, as we call them, people who are unaware of how these systems work, they think that this system is a great system and running as intended. They think if we can just get the right person in power, then we can save our countries. That is not ever going to happen because this is a completely fake and gay system. Completely fake and gay. So the sooner we realize that, the better. We're going to be watching a little video on democracy later on tonight. But there is no political solution. There is no voting our way out of this. This is not a call to violence, but the first step here is just educating everyone about how these systems function. Now that members of the public can start to have some control over what the information channels are that the public is viewing. We're no longer only getting our news and information from the ruling class. They are losing their control on some level over control of the public consciousness. And in my opinion, they are not feeling too good about losing control of public narratives. And they are sort of scrambling to keep us in a chaotic and fear state and to weak and divided in order to actually organize and do anything about it. The correct counter strategy, of course, is white men in the West behaving as a collective. This is what the elite fear the most, and this is why any form of white collectivism is demonized heavily throughout media, education, entertainment, etc. for the last several decades. They tell you if white people love their people and work together, then they are going to turn into the Nazis and start killing people and genociding people. This is simply a psyop and not true. When white people work together, they do not just suddenly all turn into evil genocidal maniacs. So yeah, we'll watch a little video on democracy later, giving some more thoughts on that from Academy of Ideas. We're also going to talk a little bit about psychological warfare, identity. Having an identity is absolutely crucial as a people in your country. And our identities, our collective identities, have been systematically destroyed over time. We've been guilted, we've been told we stole these countries, we're evil for stealing these countries, we don't have any right to continue having ownership or control of these countries. We should be ashamed of our ancestors for what they did. Our ancestors are the cause of all the evil throughout the world. And again, any form of white in-group preference means you're a bad person. White people behaving as a collective does not put the public in danger. It puts the ruling elite in danger. That is why it is demonized. Non-white people should be supportive of white collectivism because it will keep Western countries majority white and therefore keep them safe and high functioning. In order to keep Western civilization safe and high functioning, you cannot replace the very people that built and maintained those systems in the first place. Your people need to remain a majority in your country, or you will be conquered and the West will turn into a third world shithole. And that's exactly what the elite want. They want the family destroyed. They want us living in dangerous, unsafe environments, unable to buy homes, unable to get by, atomized and isolated, addicted to screens, unable to form families, unable to organize. They're inviting tens of millions of people into the Western countries. These people are taking jobs of the natives for cheaper labor because they are used to worse living conditions. And they are more comfortable doing slave work than the Western public is. They are going to be fighting for their own ethnic interests in the country. They will be fighting against any form of the host population's organizing because we have been preemptively demonized, that any form of that is evil. The migrants coming in have been educated in education, media, entertainment, that all of their problems throughout history are because of evil white people doing that to them. If they think we're responsible for all of their problems, they're not going to love and care about our country and interests at scale. The elite know how this all works on a systems level, and they are using weaponized mass migration as a weapon against us. So it's a very difficult situation we're all in these days. But the first step here is just trying our best to educate as many people as possible so that eventually we can do something about it. And eventually we can regain positive optics for a pro-white identity cause, a pro-Western country cause. And that's already, the beginning phases of that are happening. I think it is absolutely inevitable that in the next 5 years or so, we are going to see a lot more support for Western country nationalism with an emphasis on protecting white interests. And I would argue this is a good thing overall for humanity, because the agenda that the elite, the conspiring cult of psychopaths who control our systems, the agenda they have for us is not a good one. They want to control us endlessly, indefinitely, and with their technology, with artificial intelligence, with the screens, with everything they have under their control, if we do not try to stop their agenda soon, it's possible that they will have humanity in a sort of checkmate position and be able to control us indefinitely. So we need to work hard now to educate everyone about what's going on and to break people out of this brainwashing that they have been under for the last 50 years. Hope everyone's nice and comfy on the couch, as I said, enjoying your snacks and drinks. You're listening to Mind War Episode 4. My name is Adam. I'm a random guy living in Canada in his mid-30s, just trying to do my part to bring awareness to people. Chat out in a minute here. We're also going to look over some analysis tonight on psychological warfare. We have two popular series we're going over tonight. One is a movie, one is a show. We have the popular show that many people have seen, Breaking Bad. I'll have that coming up later tonight. Also, popular Stan Kubrick movie, The Shining. Many people have seen that popular old horror movie by Stanley Kubrick, who many argue was part of this cult social engineering system. And we're going to look into the anti-white messaging in that series and movie, and look into the anti-Western civilization wisdom programming. Also going to be looking at a video tonight by one of the best creators, in my opinion, who is trying to educate the public. Goes by Asha Logos on YouTube, if anyone wants to go look that up. He makes a very good video just sort of outlining where we are, what we need to do, what matters going forward, and how to stop this elite agenda, and how to regain a love of our people, our ancestors, and how to look at the people of our respective Western countries as an extended family again, instead of just atomized economic units, as we are being conditioned to do. We need to get out of this dehumanized state we are in as white Western men and women, and learn that it is okay to love our people and protect their future interests, and to protect our country's resources from outside groups. It is healthy and natural for all groups to prioritize their people. You see the Japanese and Japan prioritizing themselves. Kudos to them. I love that for them. See Chinese and China prioritizing their people, etc., all around the world. Nobody gets told they're evil for prioritizing their people and looking out for their people's interests, except white people. The average normie should really ask themselves why that is. Why is it that only white people are told that they cannot love and prioritize their people and behave with collective interests, or be deemed as evil? Is it this way because the elite think that if white people do this, that they're going to become a threat to the people of society that the elite love so much? Like the elite, they just love the people so much in their society that they just want to protect you guys from the evil white nationalists who are going to, if they start to gain traction, they're just going to go around murdering non-white people and go around murdering Jews and going door to door, blowing their heads off. No. We are demonized because they recognize that it is a threat to their satanic control systems. Anything the elite dehumanize, people should really question to themselves if that dehumanization is to protect the public or to protect elite interests. Alrighty. I'm gonna have a quick sip of water here. Very tasty water. Got that fire blazing. Nice storm here. Hope anyone tuning in is enjoying so far. My foot is cramping up a little bit. Sucks. But we are going to watch a video next. Also, we have this news out of Candace Owens. She's covering the Charlie Kirk stuff. She has traced this Egyptian plane to a building that is run by the FBI. So it's possible the FBI was involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk, but we're still investigating that. We're not really sure what's going on. If anyone wants to stay up to date with the research on that, you can follow Candace Owens. On that, much respect to her for continuing this investigation when it seems everyone around Charlie Kirk's team has not brought any questions forward or not. Because the official narrative that we've been told about Charlie Kirk is obviously bullshit. For anyone who's looking at this with honest, objective analysis, There is no good reason to believe the official narrative of the Charlie Kirk shooting. And it seems his wife, his family, everyone around him, they're not asking questions about this. And they are just trying to brush this under the rug. We should be asking ourselves why that is. Maybe it's possible Charlie Kirk faked his own death. I mean, that's a really schizophrenic type of theory. That could be an actual reason where the people not talking about it actually have good reason not to talk about it, even though it doesn't make sense. And that he's actually under a witness protection program where his life was in danger. And this was some sort of political op. I have looked a little bit into that storyline, and there are some suspicious things that went down. Maybe I'll cover that at some point. But as of right now, I do believe he was killed. And kudos to Candace Owens for looking into that. All right. I think first up, let's look at The Shining here. I'm going to check the chat here, see if anyone's chatted yet. All right, we got Miss Jessie in the house. I'm late. She's driving home. Packing for my trip while listening. Good, good. Hope you're enjoying, Miss Jessie. Magnum878. Can you say a few words about poker? Have I stopped playing? Yeah. Yes, I have stopped playing nearly as much lately anyways. I might get back into it at some point, but I just came to a point after playing that game almost every day for, 18 plus years straight. I just spiritually, I couldn't bring myself to keep doing that, even if I was going to be making less money doing something else. And it was getting more and more difficult every day to keep up with the strategy and keep up to a level where I can make good money. So I am currently on a hiatus from poker for the most part, but I might get back into it at some point. And yes, fake and gay, Miss Jessie. Indeed, indeed. All right, we're going to look at this video real quick. This is the popular movie, The Shining. Many of you may have seen it. I hope some people watching have seen this. Very popular movie. So this guy, Wyatt Stagg, does excellent propaganda analysis on this stuff. We're going to get into his analysis here and see what he says. I actually haven't seen this analysis in a long time, so I'm not sure exactly what he said. But the title here is The Shining, Stanley Kubrick and the Merchants of Fear. So let's just get right into the video here and see what he has to say.
In Stanley Kubrick's iconic 1980 horror film, The Shining, writer Jack Torrance takes the position of winter caretaker at the isolated Overlook Hotel, hoping that time and solitude will inspire his next writing project. Before accepting the job, he is informed by the hotel's manager that a previous caretaker had murdered his family and taken his own life inside the hotel.
Having a bit of buffering issues here. Going to turn this down a little bit here. We'll try this one if it has less buffering issues. This is on Breaking Bad. Going to restart the YouTube video link. This will be a Breaking Bad analysis.
Mr. White?
Yes.
You understood what I've just said to you.
Yes. Lung cancer.
All right, we're having some buffering issues here.
It's inoperable.
I'm not sure why. Let's try a different video here. See if there's issues here as well.
The West is haunted by what it thinks are moral dilemmas. Immigration, race, gender, free speech.
Well then.
Yet beneath these conflicts lies a more fundamental problem. As I explained in my previous video titled
Not sure why we're having these buffering issues here.
Morality is for friends only. Morality is simply
This is pretty much unwatchable. Let's try this one quick. This one seems good so far.
There's a deeply strange, insidious, enthusiastic push as of late, led by those moneyed forces.
So this is Asha Logos. Looks like the buffering issues aren't there for this video. He is, as I explained earlier, one of the best creators educating the public about important things. This is one of his best shorter videos. It's only about 15 minutes long. And without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy.
That have so wrested control of entertainment and popular culture to deeply instill a paralyzing guilt and shame and self-loathing in those of European background. We're now told we're essentially responsible for virtually all of the world's ills, the lion's share of historical transgressions and instances of oppression and injustice and abuse. That the best summary of our ancestors is that they were slavers and abusers, and men who supposedly gloried in genocidal fantasies. Young white children, especially, now have such sentiments drilled into their heads on a daily basis, in public schools and universities, by individuals they've been taught to trust, as they watch TV or movies, even, now, in many cases, at home, by their own parents, who've been similarly conditioned for many years now. To the extent that many of these are incapable of even conceiving of their ethnic background or heritage without feeling disgust, anger, disdain, or revulsion. All of this, broadly speaking, is a lie, an immensely draining lie. After all, our understanding of who we are as human beings is, in large part, justly determined by where we've come from. Our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and ancestors stretching back centuries and millennia. Their culture, their beliefs, their words and actions. To misunderstand them is to misunderstand yourself. And to misunderstand yourself is to misinterpret reality and your very existence. To have a faulty map as you navigate through life. Telling a young child that he springs from an evil root might justly be viewed as a powerful form of child abuse. But this isn't the only reason.
Absolutely disgusting that young white generations of children over the previous several decades have been brainwashed that their ancestors were uniquely evil and all they wanted to do was go around conquering the world for no good reason, going around murdering everyone and taking slaves and just being these absolutely terrible people, when this sort of behavior has been the norm throughout all groups of people throughout history, and white people are not uniquely evil in any sense. They were simply uniquely capable. Had any other group been just as capable of white people, they would have committed just as many evils, if not more, in my opinion. But of course, the average person in any group is a good person, including white people.
It's so sick, wrong, and unhealthy. It's so sick, wrong, and unhealthy because it's a lie. To give credit where due to the opposing argument, it is true that, historically, we've enjoyed massively outsized power. As a group that makes up scarcely 10% of the world's population, up until very recently, we were masters, in one way or another, of a majority of the, quote, civilized world. And, in fact, one small subset alone, the ancient, quote, Germanic family of Celts, Goths, Franks, Frisians, Lombards, the Norse and Anglo-Saxons, largely a singular people in a genetic sense, held immense sway over Italy, Spain, France, Germany, Ireland, Scotland, Britain, and the Netherlands, stretching all the way into Russia, which itself is named after the Norse Rus, and virtually everywhere in between. And with this great power, fairly enough, comes great responsibility. And tremendous historical power opens the door for tremendous retrospective scrutiny. Were mistakes made? Absolutely. Human beings make mistakes. This is unavoidable. But I think the operative question should rather be this. If the places had been switched, and it had been another people wielding this immense power, perhaps one of the non-white groups being taught to be so angry and so deeply resentful in our age, would they have done better in these regards? Would they have been more just, magnanimous, noble, or even-handed? Using both past and present as our guide, I hope you'll give some sincere, objective, dispassionate thought to this question. I think it's fair to say that no people has devoted so much of its time, energy, and wealth to the attempted betterment of other peoples and nations. It's all but impossible for me to imagine another people so completely relinquishing their power, fighting entire wars that nearly tore their nations to pieces over issues like slavery, instituting policy after policy that makes life measurably worse and more difficult for their own sons and daughters, to hopefully make them slightly better for those of other peoples. Much of this shouldn't be cheered, as it's a result of shrewd, subversive, strategic indoctrination and brazen dishonesty, and the aggressive and unfair dishonoring of one's ancestors should always be viewed as both disgusting and unfortunate. But if nothing else, much of it arises from a good place, from a unique desire to do or be good, according to our prevailing definition of that term. To those of a European...
Europeans have a very easy exploit from the ruling class perspective. Europeans typically fall high on the empathetic spectrum. So how the social engineering works is that they guilt you and tell you your ancestors were evil, all of your behavior was evil, and in order to be a good person, you need to put other groups ahead of yourself in the modern context. You need to not have group interests. You need to feel guilt and shame for who you are and who you come from as a people. And European empathy is the key exploit of the social engineer. They give them untrue framings of atrocities throughout history to use that empathy and emotion against European populations and guilt and manipulate them into self-destructive behavior and out-group preference, and convince them that their own people are not worth maintaining, not worth loving, not worth continuing to exist.
In background, listening to these words, especially young folks, let me tell you a little something about who you are and who your ancestors are. Because if I don't, at this point in time, it's all but certain nobody else will. You come from the Indo-European language family, a language spread by those who came before you to everywhere from India and ancient Persia and Greece, to Italy and North Africa, to Rome and Britain and Scandinavia, and virtually everywhere in between. You almost certainly spring from one of three major haplogroup lineages, one of which covered vast distances to the east, one of which created a vast seagoing empire and settled along coastal territory to the west, and the other largely hailing from the north, creating three offshoots of a tree that would go on to spread its branches across the entirety of the world. You come from a lineage of pioneering, adventurous, masterfully creative, and incredibly capable peoples, always striving, seeking new horizons. From the great sailors who first circumnavigated the globe and painstakingly charted the land, to Lewis and Clark, and the great and hardy men who led the first expeditions to the poles. A people willing to take that greatest of all leaps, to pick up everything and move across vast oceans, to settle in areas in which survival itself was absolutely not certain, in attempts to make the land flourish and create something great and new. Men who would take those seagoing craft and eventually create undersea vessels, massive carriers, and flying machines. A technology that must have been seen as impossible magic just a few generations ago, which is now ubiquitous and allows any man, woman, or child to go virtually anywhere on Earth in a handful of hours. You come from a lineage of those willing to endure immense hardship, who, generation after generation, did all they could to ensure this burden would be lesser and lesser for those that might come after. A lineage of great, seemingly unstoppable warriors, from the Spartans' last stand at Thermopylae, to the Goths and Romans joining forces to beat back the Huns in the massive Battle of the Catalonian Plains, in which one of the greatest leaders in history very willingly paid the ultimate price for his brave leadership on the field, being felled in the front lines by a Hunnic javelin, to Charles Martel, the Hammer, and the Battle of Tours, and approximately 700 years later, the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa, in which a small force of European knights took on an Islamic force far larger than their own in brutal hand-to-hand fighting. In each of these two battles, somehow managing to kill at least tenfold more than they lost, in ultimately and permanently wresting back control of Spain and the Iberian Peninsula from Islamic incursion. You hail from an ancestral line that would go on to create what was arguably the highest standard of living and the most highly cultured and educated and truly civil civilization in human history, who, after creating this solid foundation, proceeded to then cultivate some of the greatest art and artists this world has ever known. Composers with talent that seemed positively divinely inspired, architects and builders capable of producing great structures that are still without equal to this day, philosophers who made the greatest strides in helping make sense of our world, and great writers who did so much to add beauty and potency to the lives we lead within it. The automobile, the plane, the train, the television and the computer and the internet, our modern roads and highway systems. We rarely stop to recognize the extent of the achievements of this small people group because we're all so naturally and so completely immersed in them. We take it all for granted. But it was great genius that accomplished these things, and we do it a tremendous disservice by so taking it for granted. It's the greatest testament to your ancestry that it would take hundreds of hours or a great many full-length novels to even begin to outline their profound and impactful achievements. The best of these were truly gifted men, and through your veins flow these same gifts, this same powerful potential, not just to achieve great things, but to be a force for genuine justice, civility, and decency along the way. Those folks doing everything in their power to convince you otherwise, doing their damnedest to convince you of your evil heritage, that the tremendous success of your forebears was just a stroke of luck, that injustice or brutality or oppression were the foremost tools and characteristics of your forefathers. These are deeply sick individuals. And it's important to know that the extent to which you listen to them, the extent to which you flippantly toss aside your unique heritage,
as we can see here, in-group and out-group preferences on the left here. This was a study done that shows all groups have significant in-group preferences, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, etc. But liberal white people have significant out-group preference, which is extremely unnatural and effectively leads to you not surviving as a group. And this was intentionally done to demonize our history, demonize our ancestors, and cause people to not love their own people who are white. Cause white people to not care about their group interests by assuming that their ancestors are all uniquely evil and that they personally come from a uniquely evil bloodline. And that itself is incredibly evil.
and join them in their hateful crusade, which increasingly seems aimed at the total destruction not just of the cultural and spiritual foundations, but of your people themselves, represents the extent to which doors will open for you in many spheres. You'll be faced with every incentive to do so, to play the role of quisling and traitor and be richly rewarded for it. Career advancement, riches and power and influence. Because the world of money, which so indirectly controls and orients near all other spheres at present, is now dominated by the worst and most ignoble and dishonorable sorts of men. But I hope you'll pause before taking any such steps, and take a moment to remember all those who came before you, their incredible sacrifices, all they endured and pushed through, the seemingly insurmountable obstacles they defeated and left conquered in their wake, in very large part to ensure that they improved things, that your life was a better one than they were able to enjoy, that while they held the baton, they managed to move forward despite everything and create something beautiful and worthwhile for their posterity. All of this is now under threat of being lost forever. It's so important to understand that those leading the preaching of self-hatred very often don't even share your background, even if they may appear to at a glance, but rather a very different background. Which means they're not in actuality preaching self-hatred so much as hatred of the other, as they preach suicide to you and yours, often with a scarcely restrained enthusiasm and excitement. They are greatly empowered as a result. It's sick, insidious, disgusting, revolting, and yet, at present, it's winning the day. You represent the hope of turning this tide. Understand who you are. Understand where and who you come from. And be courageous. Refuse to be dishonest and mindlessly mouth the words you're being so pressured to speak. If you care in the least to prevent all of this from disappearing forever, strive to prove yourself equal to those who came before you. If the storyline of these preachers of hatred should win the day, it's not just Western civilization and culture that will disappear forever. It'll be an extremely dystopian future for all. Those playing the leading roles in shouting about oppression and injustice and brutality, and so urging others to do so, ironically tend to come from a lineage that puts ours to shame in this respect. From a lineage that seemed to pioneer and master the slave trade, the drug trade, nation and culture destroying usurious banking and human trafficking, and even relish in these things, with, quote, religious books that encourage such activities. Should they someday inherit the earth, all of that grace and magnanimity and nobility of prior ages will inevitably evaporate. And what we'll be left with will be truly a hell on earth, and will become ever more so at a pace most of us can't imagine. To repeat, you are not evil, nor were the men who came before you. But you are locked in a battle against evil. Whether we like it or not, this is the hand we've been dealt. I'm only asking you to begin to recognize it, and if possible, to please join me and take up the fight in whatever form or fashion you're able. It's no exaggeration to state that our future entirely depends on it.
So absolutely beautifully put there by Asha Logos, as always. He does great work. But yes, from the ruling class perspective, as I've repeatedly said, this dehumanization of white history and white people and us and our ancestors is so that we are not capable of organizing to defend ourselves. So we are not capable of organizing to stop the destruction of Western civilization so that they can rule over humanity indefinitely. White people do not represent a threat to the public. They represent a threat to the ruling class. Keep this in mind, everyone. And I hope to see over the next 5 years it become socially acceptable more and more for white people to love their own people and to prioritize their own interests without getting dehumanized for it. And in my opinion, this is a critical aspect of saving Western civilization, which will benefit everybody long term. If whites do die out from this agenda and become a heavy minority, non-whites who previously had been demonizing white people as they had been conditioned to are probably going to miss white people when they are being dominated by groups with significantly less empathy for them and groups who refuse to humanize them in any way and just ruthlessly dominate them, such as perhaps China. All right. Excellent message there. Message against hate. We need to love our own people again and stop demonizing the history there. I'm going to see if these videos will come in here better on this tab. Check it out quick. So this is The Shining. Do a little breakdown here. Yeah, of course, Jesse. Glad you stopped by. Hope you have a good sleep. Take care. Gonna do a little video here on The Shining. Hopefully, some people watching have seen this movie. And let's get into the analysis here. So, entertainment historically has been one of the primary weapons in socially engineering the public. Typically, when the average person looks at entertainment, they are not thinking that this could be a weapon against them. But what I hope to bring more and more awareness to is that entertainment is one of the most effective weapons against a population. And our entertainment systems have been weaponized against the Western public for a very long time. And let's get into the analysis of The Shining.
In Stanley Kubrick's iconic 1980 horror film, The Shining, Writer Jack Torrance takes the position of winter caretaker at the isolated Overlook Hotel, hoping that time and solitude will inspire his next writing project. Before accepting the job, he is informed by the hotel's manager that a previous caretaker had murdered his family and taken his own life inside the hotel, driven mad by the isolation. Arriving with his wife Wendy and his young son Danny, things quickly take an unsettling turn. Danny, who possesses a unique telepathic gift, experiences disturbing visions of the Overlook's murderous past, while Jack, growing increasingly tense and paranoid, begins to communicate with the malevolent ghosts that haunted. Gradually driven to madness by their voices, Jack is instructed to kill his wife and son in order to protect the hotel and ensure his authority as caretaker. Hunting them with an axe, he is finally lured into the Overlook's hedge maze by Danny, who misleads him with a false trail and escapes. Jack freezes to death in the snow. In the film's closing moments, a photograph in one of the hotel's hallways depicts Jack present at the July 4th ball of 1921. More than 40 years since it first hit theaters, The Shining still looms large in the Western cultural consciousness. Its cryptic themes and esoteric symbolism have inspired countless fan theories, a wealth of scholarly analysis, and even a full-length 2012 documentary dedicated to uncovering the film's narrative mysteries. It seems many viewers have sensed something hidden beneath its surface, amidst the maze-like halls of the Overlook Hotel, and behind the enigmatic symbols that adorn its walls. And there is indeed a hidden metaphorical narrative concealed within the film, conveyed by Kubrick through an esoteric language of metaphor, subliminal imagery, and subconscious suggestion. The Shining has been interpreted as everything from an allegory for the breakdown of the American nuclear family, to a metaphor for the colonial conflicts with the American Indian, to a cryptic meditation on the Holocaust narrative, and in some sense it is all of these things. The Shining is a coded commentary on Western civilization, from the perspective of a critical cultural outsider. The Overlook Hotel is a metaphor for the West, and the position of caretaker is a metaphor for its custodianship. The ghosts of the Overlook are malevolent spirits from the white man's violent past. Danny's Shining is the revelation of this ancestral guilt. One of the first clues as to the real symbolic subtext of the story is given during a conversation about the Donner Party, a group of 19th century American pioneers who, stranded in the mountains during a harsh winter, resorted to cannibalism in order to survive. With this brief historical reference, Kubrick establishes a thematic link to the European colonization of America, and hints that this is the lens through which we should interpret the events that follow. Later, in a coded metaphor for America's colonial origins, we learn that the Overlook Hotel was built upon an Indian burial ground, and that its builders were forced to fend off Indian attacks during its construction. This history of hidden racial violence mirrors the oft-repeated claim that America was founded upon a genocide. As if to leave us without any doubt, the photograph in the film's closing moments is dated July 4th, the date of the founding of the United States. Even Delbert Grady's English accent points to the ancestral origins of America's founding stock, hinting that the Overlook serves as a symbol not just of America, but of Western civilization as a whole. But if the hotel is a metaphor for Western civilization, then the position of caretaker can only represent the white man's custodianship of that civilization.
White man's burden, Lloyd, my man. White man's burden.
Jack is a symbol of white patriarchal authority, and the white man's burden is the power and responsibility this role as patriarch entails. This is conveyed in a pivotal early scene, as Jack peers down from above at a diorama of the hotel's hedge maze, a symbolic microcosm of the Overlook. Jack watches over it, almost omniscient, the master of the world that it represents. In another later sequence, we see a chandelier form a crown, the symbol of kingly authority, upon Jack's head as one frame dissolves into another. In accepting this symbolic kingship, embodied by the role of caretaker, Jack binds himself to the Overlook Hotel, the bloody past that haunts it, and the terrible sacrifices that it demands. And it is the burden of this responsibility that drives Jack to madness. But Jack's young son, Danny, blessed with the shining, the power to sense and see things that others cannot, is not so easily fooled by the dark spirits of the Overlook. He senses the hidden evils upon which it was built, and receives revelatory visions of the horrors that have marked its past. In one recurring sequence, he sees a torrent of blood gushing violently from an elevator door, turning the hotel's pristine white walls red. The symbolism is of concealed violence and repressed guilt finally breaking through, like waters through the walls of a shattered dam, drowning a world of privilege and deceit. This, Kubrick seems to tell us, is the truth of the Overlook, the truth of the white man's world. It is Danny's gift, framed as a kind of superpower, that will unleash this revelation of ancestral guilt and empower him to rebuke the legacy of evil embodied by both the hotel and his father. And he will do so with the help of Dick Halloran, a black man. It is Danny's relationship with this outsider and the threat it poses to the Overlook Hotel that first spurs Grady to call for Danny's murder. The Overlook, then, is the white man's world, a grand illusion built upon the bones of the innocent. Its walls and doors hold back hidden rivers of blood. The culture and refinement of its ghostly denizens is only a mask for their secret depravity. They drink and dance forever to distract themselves from the fact that they are already dead. This is the true symbolic significance of Room 237 and the woman that Jack encounters there. She is the embodiment of this illusion, a veil of beauty concealing only corruption and decay. Jack is a malevolent ghost from this bygone age, summoned home to claim custodianship of the hotel as his birthright. But Jack is unfit to rule. He is incompetent, an alcoholic failure as husband and father, driven mad by the weight of his own responsibilities. He is weak and impotent, symbolized by his writer's block. He is an abusive tyrant, filled with repressed murderous rage. Just as his white ancestors murdered the Native Americans who once lived where the Overlook stands, Jack murders an innocent black man upon the very same ground. Just as his predecessor killed his wife and daughters, Jack turns violently upon his own family. He is the embodiment of the white man's supposed sins and failures, inexorably bound by fate to commit the same heinous crimes as his forebears. Wendy, Danny, the Grady twins, and Dick Halloran are, like the American Indians upon whose graves the Overlook stands, the eternal victims of the white man, finally rising against his power. Only with the sacrifice of the white man, husband and father, patriarch and king, can this ancient evil be exorcised. Put simply, Stanley Kubrick's goal in creating The Shining was to manipulate the unwitting audience into seeing the white man as the villain of history. the image of madness, the source of evil in the world. He wanted every white woman to see Jack Torrance in her husband, every white child to see Jack Torrance in his father, every white man to see Jack Torrance in himself. He wanted us to view our culture as we view the Overlook Hotel, as a den of evil, built upon the bones of the innocent, and haunted by the ghosts of our criminal ancestors and their unexpiated sins. The Shining sets its sights on the subconscious mind of the unknowing viewer and, with its memes and symbols, infects it with guilt, paranoia, and fear. It can be said, then, that with The Shining, Kubrick sought not to depict madness, but to induce it. Oscar Wilde famously remarked that life imitates art far more than art imitates life, and this was Kubrick's goal, to change the world through his creations and make it a mirror for his twisted vision. The Shining is a grand cinematic ritual, and its aim is to spread fear in order to manifest a world of fear. But what might motivate Stanley Kubrick to desire the creation of this fear-based world? One can wager a guess. Over the course of his 5-decade career as a filmmaker, Kubrick continually signaled his allegiance to the secret forces which have played havoc with Western society for more than a century. The public stature and acclaim afforded to him by those forces must be taken as evidence of his pivotal importance to their plans. In short, through manipulating the collective subconscious mind of Western man, in order to spread fear and social decay, Kubrick and others like him laid the groundwork for a brave new world, helping to usher in a system of fear-based control that people would never have accepted had their minds not first been conditioned to accept it. Fear obscures reason, exposing the irrational mind to emotional manipulation and subliminal programming. It generates a feeling of powerlessness that makes us more willing to surrender control to forces we are told will keep us safe. Fear demoralizes and deracinates. It robs us of hope and agency. It kills courage and certainty. Fear is one of the enemy's most powerful weapons, and Kubrick had mastered the language of fear. But he was only one of its many merchants. Through the proliferation of these images, the enemy wages a war of psychic terrorism upon the Western mind, desecrating it with visions of suffering, depravity, and despair. The goal, put simply, is to poison the well of the soul. As our people drink deep from these tainted waters, the sickness spreads, and as it does, the enemy's power grows. Only through decoding their language can we dispel its power. Only through revealing the magician's tricks can the spell be broken. It is the illusions they weave that haunt us. It is the malevolent ghosts their screens have conjured that must be exorcised. It is the edifice of lies that they have built which must be brought down. And it will be.
Excellent breakdown there,
When I wrote my original,
as always, by Wyatt. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Definitely good to anyone watching. I would like you to contemplate how entertainment has potentially been used as a weapon to systematically condition the beliefs, emotions, and behaviors of the public over the last several decades, especially since the 80s and 90s. And to try and understand how entertainment can be used as a mind control weapon. If you control all the movies and TV shows that a group of people sees, you can really condition their reality over time. I mean, just go to Google and look how many movies they have made about the Holocaust, for instance. Not going to get into that topic here because we're on Twitch, but this is how they condition beliefs in the public consciousness. So we really need to wake up and regain control over our entertainment, media, and education systems. So excellent analysis there. We'll keep it to just that one analysis, I think, tonight. And we'll finish off the night by looking at this short 5-minute movie about identity by XQ Fonte.
The West is haunted.
And he's just going to go over quickly how critical identity is. So we've had some conversation on that. And that will conclude today's stream after we're done with this. So I hope you guys have enjoyed tonight's episode. Hope you've learned some tonight, given you some things to think about going into the future. And let's get into this quick video here.
Haunted by what it thinks are moral dilemmas: immigration, race, gender, free speech. Yet beneath these conflicts lies a more fundamental problem. As I explained in my previous video titled "Morality is for Friends Only," morality is simply the system of internal restraints that persists cooperation and suppresses defection within a group. Morality is objective, but not universal. It is locally objective. Behavior X is not right or wrong universally. We have to ask, right or wrong for whom? Is it right for the lion to eat the gazelle? From the lion's perspective, yes. From the gazelle's perspective, obviously not. Since morality is downstream of identity, when identity is forgotten or denied, issues like immigration lack clear decidability and resolution, because without knowing who we are, we cannot know what is right for us. It should now be clear why our moral dilemmas are not actually crises of morality, but, as Rurik Skywalker says, crises of identity in disguise. To avoid confusion, for the rest of this video, I'll be referring to actual morality as morality, and universalist morality as pseudo-morality. Consider some of the most charged issues of our time. Immigration. The pseudo-moral frame is be inclusive. The moral frame is protect the in-group from dilution and replacement. Historical guilt. The pseudo-moral frame is atone for, quote, historical injustices. The moral frame is punish betrayal and reward loyalty to lineage. Gender roles. The pseudo-moral frame is promote equality. The moral frame is preserve fertility. War and foreign policy. The pseudo-moral frame is spread democracy. The moral frame is ensure the sovereignty of our people. Tolerance. The pseudo-moral frame is celebrate diversity. The moral frame is defend our identity and group interests and tolerate nothing that threatens it. In all the
Indeed. That was well put there. They tell us that to be high morality is to do all of these pseudo-morality things, which results in the destruction of our people, of our interests, and increased suffering for not only us, but everyone else in the society as well. If something destroys your group and increases suffering for everyone, it is not higher morality, even if it sounds better on paper. The problem with these leftist delusions is that, while they may sound good on paper, they fail to understand the brutal nature of our reality oftentimes. So they cause self-destructive behavior and cause increased suffering due to this lack of understanding of the true nature of reality. they have an idealistic understanding of reality that was programmed into them by our nefarious elite.
In these cases, the supposed moral debate is a mask concealing a crisis of identity, and the identity crisis can only be solved if morality is properly understood and put in its proper place. The correct sequence is identity, loyalty, morality. Identity is primary and defines who. To whom do I belong? Who are we? What is our genetic, cultural, and historical lineage? Loyalty is secondary. It is the emotional, moral bond to that identity. Loyalty says, I prioritize my kind, and by doing so, maintains the cohesion of the in-group. Now you can see why identity has to be primary, because identity is the target, the referent of loyalty. Without an identity, loyalty has no object. You cannot.
And this is why they have destroyed our identity over the years. If you have no shared identity, if you cannot easily identify who the people of your country are, you cannot cohesively protect your group's interests, and you become atomized and easily conquered by enemy forces.
Be loyal in the abstract. You are loyal to something. Identity defines the in-group, those to whom you are loyal. Morality, then, is tertiary. Morality, as the rules of behavior that emerge to regulate conduct within the group, governs behavior inside the bounds defined by identity and maintained by loyalty. To reiterate, morality, like loyalty, is necessarily particular. You can't be moral toward everyone any more than you can be loyal to everyone, and to attempt this is to be loyal to none and not moral at all. This is the foundation of any stable and sane social and civilizational order. This sequence in this order prevents skipping identity and making pseudo-morality primary, which leads to this mistake. I am loyal to good people, thus the moral community defines my in-group, ergo, moral universalism. Universalist pseudo-morality is the default position today in the West, a relic of Christian universalism which exports in-group norms to broader society, and although modern secular ethics are explicitly non-religious, they inherit this universalist structure even after abandoning the theological content. We are not firstly good people, we are first our people. Loyalty follows identity, not virtue. Morality serves identity, not the reverse. The recent Shiloh Hendricks case brought this issue into sharp relief, as whites on both sides revealed their allegiance. Some were loyalists, others moralists. The loyalists are right. We support Shiloh not because she is flawless, but because she is one of us. Identity defines the circle, loyalty binds us within it, morality governs our relations, and duty preserves and perpetuates it all. It's time for European civilization to resolve its identity crisis, and once again prioritize its own.
Indeed, well put. The thing is with different groups throughout humanity, throughout the world, is we all naturally have this in-group preference. In order for a group to survive, they need to be prioritizing their own group's interests above other groups, because all other groups around them are doing the same thing. The situation that has been created in the modern context is white people have been brainwashed into thinking their own group is inherently evil and actually prioritizing outside groups above their own group. This is self-destructive behavior that leads to you not surviving. You cannot be the only group within a society that does not have in-group interests, does not prioritize your own people. If there is a group behaving in this way, they will simply not survive long-term, and that is the goal of the leftist indoctrination. So, excellently put there. Hope you guys have enjoyed this evening. It's been fun. We've covered a lot. Coming with you with the next episode number 5, probably next week sometime. It's been a lot of fun, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everyone.